I'm 79 years old, and lately I've been realizing that apologies lose their power with time. Not all at once. They don't expire loudly, they just stop working. I'm saying this now because there isn't much later left. Because when you reach this age, you stop telling stories to feel better about yourself. You tell them because the truth starts to press on you and there's nowhere else for it to go. I wake up most mornings before the sun. Not because I'm disciplined, but because sleep doesn't hold me the way it used to. The house is quiet in a way that feels final. Even the walls seem tired. I sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and look at the same scratches in the wood I've been looking at for years. I used to think they were meaningless, now they feel like witnesses. At this age, you start counting time differently, not in years or months, but in how many faces you still see, how many phone numbers still ring when you dial them, how many people would notice if you didn't wake up tomorrow. That's where this thought began for me. That apologies, as the ones I saved for later, don't travel as far as I thought they would. When I was younger, I believed time was generous. I don't remember deciding that. It was just the air everyone breathed. I believed that if I messed something up, I could fix it later. If I hurt someone, I could explain myself when things slowed down. If I missed a moment, there would be another one waiting. That belief shaped my entire life, and I didn't know it was happening. In my 20s and 30s, I was busy in ways that felt responsible. I worked long hours, not because I loved the work, but because that's what adults did. I told myself I was building something solid. I wasn't careless, that's important to say. I wasn't cruel on purpose. I just postponed things that made me uncomfortable. Difficult conversations, admitting I was wrong, saying I was sorry when I still felt defensive. I told myself I'll explain later when emotions cool down. I told myself they know I didn't mean it. I told myself this doesn't need to be dealt with right now. Right now was always inconvenient. I remember my wife standing in the doorway one evening, arms crossed, asking why I hadn't come to her father's birthday dinner. I'd stayed late at work again. I said something like, "You know how things are right now." I didn't apologize, not really. I thought understanding would substitute for apology. I thought intention mattered more than impact. She didn't yell. That's what makes it worse in memory. She just nodded, turned away and said, "Okay." That word followed me for years. There were dozens of moments like that. Small enough to ignore. Too small, I thought, to define anything. When my kids were young, I missed things that seemed trivial at the time. School plays, soccer games, late-night talks when they were upset about something they couldn't name yet. I told myself I was providing. I told myself they would understand when they were older. Sometimes they asked for apologies, not directly, but in the way children do. Why weren't you there? Why do you always have to work? Do you even want to come? Those questions made me uncomfortable. So I answered them practically instead of emotionally. I explained, I justified, I promised next time. I thought apologies were for big mistakes. I didn't realize that neglect feels big when you're on the receiving end of it. Time passed the way it always does. Quietly, efficiently. Birthdays stacked up. Photographs gathered dust. Arguments faded without ever being resolved. And I mistook silence for forgiveness. By my 40s, I had settled into who I was, or who I thought I was, reliable, hard-working, not very expressive, but well-meaning. People around me adjusted. That's the dangerous part. When people adjust to your absence, you don't notice the damage you're doing. My wife stopped asking me to talk. She stopped waiting up for me. She stopped expecting apologies. At the time, I felt relieved. I thought we had reached an understanding. What we had reached was distance. The thing about delayed apologies is that they change shape. What starts as, "I'm sorry I was late," slowly becomes, "I'm sorry this is how things turned out." And those are not the same thing. In my 50s, the house grew quieter. The kids moved out. My wife and I ate dinner across from each other, the television filling the space where conversation used to be. Sometimes I thought about saying something, about acknowledging the years that had slipped by. But by then it felt strange, out of place. How do you apologize for a pattern? How do you say sorry for a life? So I didn't. I waited for the right moment. I was always very good at waiting. The turning point didn't arrive with drama. It came in a doctor's office with fluorescent lights and a man I barely knew telling us that my wife was sick. Terminal is a word that empties a room. It steals all the noise from the air. On the drive home, she stared out the window, quiet. I wanted to say everything then. Every apology I had stored away like spare change. But fear has a way of freezing your mouth. In the months that followed, I tried to make up for things. I was present in ways I hadn't been before. But presence without history feels thin. One afternoon, sitting beside her hospital bed, I finally said, "I'm sorry." I said it carefully, like it was fragile. She looked at me for a long time before answering. Then she said, "I know." That was it. Not forgiveness, not anger, just acknowledgement. And in that moment, I understood something too late. Apologies aren't just about the words, they're about timing. They work when the wound is still open, when the other person still feels seen enough to receive them. Once time has hardened things, an apology can't reach the same depth. My wife passed away 6 months later. After the funeral, people told me I had been a good husband. They meant well. I nodded and thanked them. But their words slid off me, because I knew the truth was more complicated than that. In the years since, I've tried to reconnect with my children. They're polite. They call on holidays, they visit when they can. But there's a carefulness now, a distance that doesn't come from anger, but from habit. I've apologized to them more than once. They accept it kindly. And then we return to who we've been to each other for decades. That's when it fully sank in. Some apologies arrive after the relationship has already adapted to your absence, and by then, the apology doesn't undo the shape things have taken. I don't say this to be dramatic. I say it because this is what time does. It doesn't punish you. It just keeps moving. There are things I can't fix now, conversations that will never happen, moments that belong to a version of me that no longer exists. I can't go back and sit in that doorway with my wife and say, "You're right, I should have been there." I can't rewind to a school gymnasium and watch my child scan the crowd for my face. Those chances are gone, not because I failed, but because I delayed. If you're listening to this, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I don't have the authority for that. I'm just telling you what I learned too late. Apologies are not timeless. They don't wait patiently while you get your life in order. They belong to the moment they're needed, and if you miss that moment, they lose weight, they lose warmth. Eventually, they become explanations instead of bridges. I still believe people mean well, I meant well, but meaning well doesn't protect you from the cost of postponement. Now, at 79, my days are quiet, not always lonely, but reflective in a way that's heavy. I think about how I'll be remembered, not in grand terms, just in the small, private ways that matter. I don't know if this will reach anyone who needs it, and that's okay. I just know that if I had understood earlier that time changes how words land, I would have spoken sooner, even if my voice shook, even if I wasn't ready. There's a difference between being ready and being willing. I wasn't willing soon enough. If this meant something to you, you don't need to do anything about it. Just hold the thought gently. As for me, I'll finish my coffee, wash my cup, and sit with the morning a little longer. That's what I have now. Time in smaller amounts, and the honesty I once kept waiting